going back to orient you guys where Xai is. Xai starts or is in the back right quadrant of the brain, and it is a subjective discernment. So we're going to go over the power flows of Xai today and relate those to each one of the power flows to the overall signal of poignancy, which the Xai alphas
give off over everything. Before we continue, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to define poignant for you. For those who, I'm sure you know the word, but it doesn't hurt to do this because we're going to be using poignancy in sort of a metaphorical way a lot, and so it helps to know the meaning of it because we're going to play with the principles here. So I'll read a few off. Profoundly moving, touching, physically painful, keenly distressing to the mind or feelings. Okay, that has a lot to do with, you may have heard us using with the Xai the term like deep sorrow. That is one of the subdivisions of poignancy. There's several flavors of it. So poignancy is the base flavor, and then there's things that go from there. So those kind of relate to it, but there's other elements. It's a very nuanced word, poignancy, and the signal is very nuanced. Astute and pertinent, relevant. Xai, like Xai, remember the vital resources and sacred resources? There's a poignancy to them because you're talking about the most important things, the things they hold most sacred. Everyone has that, the things they hold most sacred. So if you are touching Xai or Xai is activated, it's often going to be about very relevant things to the core of you. Then also there is the piercing, incisive. The reason why the physical pain is there, the emotional pain, things of that, it's moving, is because it's touching that deep core. So when you touch that, it's like the very root of a tree. So of course it's very, very sensitive to impingement, because that's what a lot of the life force comes from. So there's a few other meanings of it here that I think are relevant, which is a quality that arouses emotions. And that relates to talking again about how Xai has sacred resources and can say when they are brought up or not. So poignancy at simplest level is going to do that. It's actually going to stimulate the Xai. The Xai has been stimulated, and therefore it will do what it does. So now we'll kind of walk you through that, keeping that as like our watchword, poignancy, and those various definitions. Okay, do you want to start from the concept?
Yeah. So the concept of Xai is the concept of harmony. So being a compass, it's and in this case a personal values compass. So it's set to harmony. So it's at peace, or its purpose is to ensure that the psyche stays at equilibrium and at peace. And so it denotes what's harmonious and what's not harmonious, harmony and disharmony, and keeps the psyche set to harmony.
Absolutely. And where does the poignancy come from? Well, poignancy often has to do with heightened emotions or heightened things being at stake, or the juxtaposition between safe and danger. Those things cause a poignant moment. So kind of metaphor we like to use for this is with harmony, you can imagine like a glade or a grove in a forest, and this special place, this sacred place, is set apart. It's in the forest or the jungle, and it is harmony. But as you mentioned in the power flows, when you talk about harmony, you bring into being the concept of disharmony. So if you have this sacred grove of harmony, then there of course is what makes a grove. A grove is that safe area within a forest. So you actually have to have the wild forest that is not harmonious to give harmony its meaning. Okay, so if you imagine that you're seeing this jungle, and then there's this grove, and the grove makes up the majority of it. So the forest around it, the tangled area, is just the very perimeter. Okay, and then within, what you're mainly seeing as the grove, you are looking at bliss. You see a little baby with a unicorn walking around all naked, picking flowers, and just, there's just honeybees. It's just great. It's wonderful. And the honeybees don't sting. They just give honey. It's just great. Okay, so, but I think we all can see it's kind of like a hallmark moment there, kind of like a moment where it pulls at your heartstrings a bit because it's poignant. That kind of innocence, that kind of harmony is so difficult to achieve. And so when you see it, it's like, wow. Right? it's a poignant moment because that's very hard to get. That's very hard to achieve that. So poignancy is often seen as in the moments where harmony is being distorted and how it is reestablished. And we're going to talk about the power flows. But the very beginning of poignancy is harmony. Because harmony does have the concept of disharmony, and that's poignant. The fact that harmony is defined by disharmony is kind of poignant, if that makes sense. And so that's going to continue on that relationship. So you want to begin with the power flows?
Yes. So we start off with the constant qualities that Xai gives off, and we'll start with it starts with hope. And
which I define from real quick, like a recap of what hope is.
Yeah. So hope would be when you are hopeful. So Xai brings forth a hopeful mindset that disharmony will not be present. That harmony will prevail, and it makes you immune to disharmony.
Disharmony, and you are bringing that. You are the hope bringer, and so it's you being hopeful that allows harmony to continue to be. So poignancy for there is going to be that. Well, the poignancy of Xai both affects the person and affects everyone else. Just like we talk about buoyancy, it's buoyant for themselves and buoyant for those in the bubble. So the Xai poignancy, to see someone, if I see someone who is in a state of hopefulness, that's so raw, that's so potentially vulnerable, it's so authentic, that you feel that exposure of sacred, raw, special resources like that, that a person is actually showing that, or that it is present. The poignancy of it is, I think, felt so strongly because the vulnerability of it, the authenticity of it, is actually integral to its strength. There's something always poignant when like strength and weakness are linked within one another. Does that make sense? So to see that hope is so open to the world coming in and disillusioning it, for example, that vulnerability is poignant to someone observing it, but so is the fact of what you can do in that state. What someone can achieve only in a hopeful state it's poignant. It doesn't happen very often. You should take notice of that. It's important. It's very relevant to human experience. But then also for the Xai user, in themselves, they do experience that, wow, I'm really vulnerable. When I go out in this hopeful way, I'm almost like an innocent child that could be taken advantage of or not see things coming. And so you are aware that you are doing that. Kind of an artist goes out to say poetry from their inner Xai. They're like, I'm going to go out there now. And before you do it, this is a poignant moment because I'm hoping it goes okay. Because I really don't have the power to make it go okay other than to hope it. But that hope actually will make those magic experiences. So it's not wrong. There's a poignancy of there could be a bonding of souls when you take that hopeful stance and it is positively reciprocated. Mm-hmm. So the poignancy of which way is it going to go. In Xai, because everything is basically always balancing these sacred resources, there's always this, I hope it goes good. But you can't get that without playing that card. That's the poignancy factor. You just, without that danger, you cannot get those successes. And so Xai is tricky, like Nai that way, but it is extremely powerful. Do you want to add anything before we go to the next one? Or?
No.
Okay, want to keep going? Oh, next.
Idealism. And idealism keeps one at a, so it calls out to higher ideals, it calls out to the good. And so, whereas, harmony, or actually hope, made you immune to the disharmony, the idealism is more proactive in a way that you're
hope is more pure, and the idealism, you're trying to get the most good that's possible and keep looking to that. So it's a little more realistic. It's moving more down the power flow, mm-hmm. But it's still extremely innocent. For this reason, when it's being done to a person, like for example myself, I see a person with Xai doing that, there's an intense feeling of poignancy because they're calling, as I mentioned in some of these other recordings, different spirit forms you have. You have more positive, more negative ones. And when a creature basically comes before you and is calling directly to your more noble ones, it makes you aware that you actually have this pantheon in you and you could go that way. You get this feeling of, I really could decide right now if I want to be heroic or not. She's basically coming up and saying, what about this, this, and this, based on some value that a hero would feel. Idealism is looking for the hero in you and looking for the hero in others. So when they do that, there's that poignancy of, wow, a creature just walked up and asked me to be a hero. And I could do it or I could not. It really makes you realize this is a very important moment. And then vice versa, you're doing that when you go forward in an idealistic state, is when I reach out like that, again, similar to hope, I am putting myself in a heroic state. I'm choosing to go with my ideals. This is a playing style choice. A noble one. It's an extremely noble playing style choice that has a lot of payoff, but also a lot of risk. And so there's a poignancy to that. There's a poignancy to making that decision, like, I'm going to live my life as a poet, or I'm going to live my life trying to see the best in people. I'm going to live my life as a conscionable objector. These are different idealistic cults, and they're going to make you come at the world differently. The world will look at you very differently if you lead with ideals. You know what I mean? So that's going to get up the stakes, make for poignant moments as you meet people and perhaps their ideals don't match yours. Or maybe they're not well developed, they simply find that way being too uncompromising or something. That makes poignant moments because you may lose friends, you may lose easy connections that won't work with idealism. Idealism wants the best. So again, it brings up that a very important call is going to be made now, and it could go either way. And it'll be a shame, it'll be very sad, it'll be painful if it goes the wrong way, but I'm going to put it out there because the risk is worth it. A lot of poignancy is about that, is that with Xai and with Xai, there is a risking yourself with the vital or sacred resources. With the Xai, it's more values-based. There's very much a feeling like, wow, I'm putting like my heart out there, like the raw part of me, and how's it going to go? But I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it because I don't want to live a life another way. That's a poignant moment when a creature decides, I don't want to live an inauthentic life. And so authenticity is going to come here in a minute down on the counterbalances, but you can see where it comes from. These early powers are demanding authentic existence. An authentic existence is going to cause a lot of poignant moments to come up on a daily basis, because it's easier to buffer yourself with what we call mazoots or memes and not actually be talking from that place. Upside is you don't get hurt. The sacred resources don't get kicked or poked, but you don't get the return on investment that can only come from investing that. So being idealistic is it's a gamble. It's a gamble with sacred resources. Whenever someone starts gambling with sacred resources with hope and idealism, it's poignant for the people watching it and the person doing it, which is why it demands being done very well. So when you see in movies when they have poignant moments, usually that's in the time of the movie or the story where the storyteller really, really, really wants you to get it. They want to make sure you did not miss it. So when you think about those are the poignant moments of the movie, those are the sacred moments. The ones if you don't remember the other ones, you definitely remember those. You add anything to the idealism part?
No, I think that was great.
Cool.
The next one would be virtue. And virtue is more active, more proactive than the other two, right?
Yeah, and also it's a way of stabilizing, because the hope is just a pure state, and then the idealism is sort of a way of looking at others and yourself. But the virtue is going to start, which happens with the subjective discernment powers, handling stress. And that's where the poignancy comes in from here in the virtue, is you have this concept of harmony you want to keep, you have a hopeful way of looking at the world, you look at other people's situations in the idealistic way, try to get the best out of it, but still, sometimes that doesn't always give you immediately what you would want as far as a quick win or the easy way. So virtue has poignancy into there will be going the hard way with virtue. You'll return that money. Well, that money that you found or whatever could have helped you. It could have made your lot easier for the short run. Virtue says, I have to forego that. There's a poignancy as you look at that money and you think, this would really, really help me. And And you're at that moment of, what do I do? That's a poignant moment. So you're seeing where poignancy keeps coming up. These are character calls. Xai has a lot to do with character calls, and that brings in the poignancy, because you're basically deciding, what kind of person am I? How do I play this game called life? I mean, how do I see myself, as a hero? What's my virtue? Exactly. What my role? Exactly. What am I allowed to do and still be hopeful? What am I allowed to do and still be idealistic? And very much in the more interactive way with virtue. What am I allowed to do and still be hero? There's a point to that, because sometimes that means giving up stuff you'd like to have. Mm-hmm. You want to add anything to that?
No, like I said, sometimes it means keeping with virtue means that you have to give up, some things in order to stick with the ideals.
Yeah, do it the right way.
Yeah,
exactly. Sometimes it means going a longer or harder way, but it's the right way, and you know that. So your virtue gets fed that, but it may not get fed food or money or promotion or other things. It's being fed, I'm being virtuous, that's the food I get, but I do not get this other food, which is very oftentimes a more concrete or logical decision. Like, logically, you would take what would help you in material sense. But if your character would feel it would be impinged on, I would be less of the hero I see myself as if I was to do that. I can't do that. And it's poignant because it hurts. Mm-hmm. I'd like to have it, I'm a good person, why can't I be? But because I wouldn't be as virtuous like I like to be.
Mm-hmm. So now we get into detection. And with detection, there are 3 levels. You could think of it that way. It starts off with gut reaction. And with gut reaction, so the stimulus is coming from the environment, and it hits Xai, and the Xai resonates with it, has sort of a,
That resonating can be very fast and hard, like a convulsion or a clinch or a flinching kind of reaction.
Yeah, physical, like a physical reaction, like, when people say they felt it in their gut, that's...
Clenching up.
Yeah, the clenching up. Yeah.
So the poignancy angle here, where again, those with Xai could have that poignancy, is they often feel impingement directly in a stomach kind of way, and then it shows on their face, and is felt in an unaware, it takes me kind of way. So there's poignancy to that, because the pain is clearly felt and clearly shown to others, although they are unaware of how it looks. There is not an ability to ignore it. The Xai users can be extremely powerful and strong and stoic, but they feel it. You know what I mean? What's that song? What's her name? The Chinese singer, Feist? Or someone? I forget what song. I lost it. Anyway, it'll come back to me. What were we talking about?
I feel it all.
I feel it all. Yes, yeah. I feel it all. Xai feels it all. The gut reaction that's how it understands things. So it tends to go through life, and its gut reactions will be felt immediately and instinctually in a free form, take you over kind of way. If they like it, it'll be a really awesome feeling. If it's bad, it'll be a chilly, cold, grab you in the stomach kind of way. So either way, it's very fateful. Their life decisions, or wherever the environment has gone, that will determine the gut reactions. So everything has an immediacy, particularly as it relates to distress, because that's how Xai notes if things are going well or not well. Is this like a good intake or a bad intake? But it is it hits you. And so there's a poignancy to it. I know, being a Xi user, I see it, because when I present something, there's that poignant moment where you see how their gut reaction takes it. And you hope the gut reaction goes, as opposed to, I'm like, oh, bad. So right there. But the point is, that poignancy is important. For example, for Xi users, and I'll get later filmings about how Xai needs, Xi needs Xai, is that poignancy is important, for example, for Xi's code of conduct. It creates a poignant moment of, I need to note if the gut reaction liked my gesture, liked my conduct. So it's very important for humans to have that. Poignancy really has a lot to do with humans in general having good code of conduct. If they're not aware of poignancy, of poignant moments, there are people who watch stories where heroic lessons happen and they go, cool movie. They didn't get the poignant moments, and thus they didn't get the hero upgrade. Getting a hero upgrade has a lot to do with recognizing poignancy in other humans and in situations and motifs. I get pumped up with this.
No, this is great. So the next one would be essence reading. So gut reaction was the first level where you were resonating with things, feeling them viscerally, or not viscerally, but like physically when the stimulus or information is coming in. The essence reading is now you've gotten that, and you feel a certain way, and you feel very strongly about it. So now you're kind of going out there a little bit and seeing.
Continues the detection process.
Yeah, detection process. So you're going out and trying to figure out what the intent is of this signal that you've received that has hit you in a certain way. So you're reading the essence of that.
Kind of their Xai's position, what its position was when it did this thing to you, good or bad. And this again creates a sense of poignancy. Why? Because if you have your Xai affected in a positive way, and then you use essence reading and find out, oh, they just did that cause there was no really good thought felt towards me, or they weren't in a good mood or doing it from a good place in their heart. It just was a part of the dynamics. It just happened. There's a point in moment you realize, oh, sometimes in life when good things happen, it's not because of nobility, it's just random. Mm-hmm. It's a bit poignant when you have to realize that, and that's an ongoing thing. It's also poignant when you realize, ow, hey, oh, they're in a bad way too. Sometimes lots of people are in bad ways and they poke each other and no one's wrong, it's just that happens. That's a point lesson. You learn it.
And that really makes the compass very nuanced.
Yeah, exactly. It's like an ongoing lesson. You learn through all kinds of situations and motifs of, oh, sometimes life goes like that. That's poignant. And essence reading has a lot to do with that relating to people, of why people did a thing. It hits you, but why did it hit you like that? Sometimes it's for different reasons than you thought, and those cause for poignant realizations. Yep. But important ones, very important.
And now the last one in the detection is the empathy. So now empathy is actually going into the other person's camp and feeling what they feel, walking in their shoes, kind of really bridging that Xai pipeline.
Actually going into their sacred space, so you really kind of feel what gives them the most sense of comfort and the most sense of discomfort, particularly when it comes to a psychological or emotional well-being state. This should be fairly obvious where the poignancy comes in, is if you take the empathy to feel the plight of, for example, mojo reading. You see a person on TV who's in a bad way in another country, and you can see that the actions they're doing to take care of their children or to get by in life, your essence readings can kind of see why they're doing that. Like, wow, they're having to do these kind of rough things, but it's because of that. And that is poignant. Mm-hmm. Another one is you start actually doing a mojo read and you start going into them and realize, wow, that person, for example, you can use empathy for anyone, but I'm using an example to highlight, that's a Xai. That's like me. And then you start feeling, what if I'd been raised the last 2-3 decades like that? What if I had that? What if I was injured? What if I was hungry? And that should be obvious how poignant that would be as you realize that could be me. I don't think more poignant than that could be me. So I can go on, but that's pretty simple, that one.
The next ones would deal with processing, so how Xai processes. So the initial is internalizing, resonating and internalizing. So that's kind of, as the words indicate. So as, information comes into Xai, there is some of them, some of it will resonate with the compass, and so you want to start moving sacred resources.
Summoning it, getting them ready.
At that point, getting them ready, because you feel like there's going to be something coming that you have to take a stand on, and so you start making that room for
and bring them up the pipeline. Mm-hmm. A good analogy for this would be, for example, like in, say, gambling. It's kind of funny thing of Xai, because you think of Xai like that perhaps. But I think it's a good metaphor here as far as understanding the use of the sacred resources, which is you're watching a movie and there's that scene where It can be gambling, like actual classic gambling, or it can just be a gambling scene of the movie. It can be metaphysical gambling. And what happens is the hero is basically told that their current being, their sacred resources, which is the tip of the iceberg always, whatever your Xai currently has, there's an infinite iceberg beneath the surface. It's not sufficient. So there's a very poignant moment here in all of those kind of heroic stories where the hero has to decide to walk away from the table or double up, to go to the bank and get more money. They're basically, remember, like Xai, I don't have a breaking point, that's so awesome, is basically, you think very like a gambling here, like a Z, it's going to break you by saying you don't have enough. So you can walk away from the table or you can go and mortgage the house. That's a very way of looking at it. It doesn't mean you sold it yet, but that's how serious you're going to take this. If that's what it takes, I just mortgage my house and now I have that money to put in the line. And I will, because I'm going to win this. We see our enemy a little choked up. That's extremely poignant. When a person basically is being told all the normal amount of things that you're comfortable with giving and using and exposing are not enough. You're going to have to go into stuff you are not comfortable with, sacred resources. Like for example, the house. That's not normal money. It's like money in the bank. That's not normal money. That's the house. But sometimes you just can't walk away from that table. So, excuse me, get choked up, but that's an extremely poignant moment when you decide, I'm not going to walk away. I'm just going to go get more money. I'm going to sell whatever I need to do. I'm going to summon whatever I have to because I'm going to make that happen.
And the next one is going even further. It's conviction and investment. So now, not only have you made room for the sacred resources, now you're actually at a point where you're actually going to start mobilizing those sacred resources. You're in for the long haul. So,
yeah. And if not the long haul, yeah, no, she's right. The long haul or the whole enchilada, both. And we'll use that analogy again. Is basically the light in life. The table has said, go away. You don't have enough. You played your hand, what resources you have, and it's played out. And so you went and you mortgaged your house or whatever you want to call it to get more money. And now they're going to try to break you again. They're going to try and say, okay, fine, put your money in and make it to where you are nervous to put it in. But when Xai is strong, it does not flinch. It didn't flinch when it said, I need more money. Then it went and it did the investment internalizing and it got the money from the house. And it walked to the table and they go, we've upped the bid since you were gone. The bid's even more now. Whatever. I'm going to win and I'm not walking away, so you can do whatever you want, but you're breaking, not me. It's extremely powerful. So again, it's that just getting stronger when it's being given resistance, what it considers to be incorrect resistance. It will just keep summoning until it's just not here anymore. And you don't get any more powerful than that. It just keeps going and going until that's it. I'm right. This is wrong. So that's how I'm playing it. Point.
And the last one is devotion and sacrifice. So there are times that require that you put it all in, to the point of sacrifice
Of everything.
of everything.
For example, if you keep an analogy,
Of all the sacred
resources. So let's say putting the house in, that is a sacred resource because that could be very difficult or impossible to recover from. But you could perhaps take that. It's a tremendous hit, but it's not everything. Maybe everything in this context would be the job. Maybe it would be a community. But it's the all. It's like everything you can possibly imagine. And when that's asked for, you're like, still, it's the right answer. I'm going to play it that way. So you go to the table, they tell you you don't have enough. You should go away. You don't go away. You go and you mortgage the house. And you come up and try to make you flinch by saying, we raised the bet, whatever, fine. I put it in, doesn't matter. And then often they will attempt to do something where they are openly trying to break you. And the way they do that is they threaten the core of the tree. That's how they always do it. And you can either flinch or you can clinch. You can actually get stronger. And so what happens is they'll say, for example, that it takes more than that. You have to put yourself on the table. You've got to put your business on the table. You have to put your name, your reputation, things like that. Things you're like, that's not part of me, that is me. And you don't flinch. Because nothing's changed. From the beginning of the hope and the harmony, disharmonies come in and I'm making my stand and I'm not coming off this point. That's poignant because it keeps ratcheting up. The stakes just keep getting higher and higher. The person, will not move. That should make all the heroes want to come that person's help, because you're seeing a hero in action. So that's poignant. Can you finish up with the overall theme?
Yeah, the overall theme is the personal moral compass or values compass that that's what Xai is.
It's like all those power flows as an overall muscle, and it kind of goes back to the beginning, which is that makes for a way of life that is extremely raw and authentic, and therefore all the encounters are so poignant because you're not going to weigh it based on V supplies. You're not going to weigh it based on Z protocols and scheduling and things like that and rank. You're measuring it based on how it hits your moral values. That means you could be taking a lot of hits in other places. You can take a lot of hits in what most would consider like getting on in life, getting money, getting advantage.
Mm-hmm.
But you are keeping the advantage you want, which is your moral position.
Mm-hmm.
And if necessary, whatever it takes, you will keep your moral position, because without that, what do you have? So the distinct signal of poignancy is often felt in sort of sub-flavors, because a person may have channeled that energy in certain ways. There's a lot of variety, but we'll just start with kind of what we call the three counterbalances that each of the powers have, just to give a little of the differentiation. The first is humane. It's a spectrum, humane to depressive. And that's because those who have Xai, and it goes up higher depending on their hierarchy ranking, is they feel things like I feel it all. For that reason, both for other people, you feel their pain. So that gives a very humane mindset. It causes for a lot of poignancy because you are feeling what other people are feeling, related to empathy, but other powers as well. But other people could perceive that as depressing. So that is really just an interpretation of poignancy, both by the hero. The hero can channel that poignancy into a more humane to depressing spectrum, and they could, as opposed to the other two spectrums we'll mention in a minute here, and also within that spectrum they could have successfully channeled it towards being humane versus being channeled more towards depressive. And third is the other people, based on their mojos and their life experiences and their development, can interpret that poignancy different ways. For example, I could experience poignancy and be more likely to think of it as humane. Other mojos who perhaps don't have as much G, or that may interpret it differently. So we're trying to explain the incredible nuance, because you're like, everyone has poignancy coming out of them 24/7. That seems hard to believe, man. Well, first of all, it's true, so just accept that. I'm right. That's happening. But the other thing is that it has so many ways it manifests. You got to see a lot of its variations before you can see all the ways poignancy comes out, particularly when we talk about different counterbalances, but also, for example, say Xai Christina, it's in a different place, and I have it in my 6th position. So the poignancy is coming out in these radically different ways. As we always say, if you want to like be a master of any of the powers or something, you really have to know it in all 16 mojos, because that's what that power does. That's its role in the collective, is to do that in some position in all the psyches. Some powers get seen that way more than others. For example, V. V is low in my hierarchy. It's very low in both their hierarchies, but we all are very aware of it. And we're very aware of a lot of nuance of it, because you kind of have to be. People make you. Xai is one of those powers that people sometimes opt not to, and that is a big mistake, because it is equally powerful as any of the other powers, and it's vital to completing the heroic mission and knowing what you're doing as a character. But it can be hard to define because of its amorphous nature, and therefore a lot of people who have it don't understand it very well, and those who have it lower in their hierarchy often ignore its existence. Like, they're going to debate that it actually is there, which is not a debate. But does that make sense so far? Okay, so the other two counterbalances, I need to jump in if you want.
No.
Okay, but jump in please if you feel like it. But the other two are, we're going to say innocent to deluded. And this is because coming at things in that hopeful, idealistic, virtuous way can seem innocent in a pure, noble way, like a unicorn, a baby's unicorn, that's awesome. It also can cause for not looking at, say, realistic, hard things like Z, like systemic dynamics, that may go against what Xai is feeling of its innocent state. So again, you're talking about a person who has poignancy. They could favor this spectrum over the other one, say over the first one I talked about. But then there's also the variation of how successful they were. Does it come off in general as more humane because of their better use of it, or does it come off as more diluted because of less good use of it? And then the third dynamic, and this gets again into social alchemy, is how do the others receive it? Because regardless of how well she uses her poignancy and which one of the counterbalances you kind of favor, the environment, the mojos, they have ways of looking at things. They'll interpret some things differently than others. So in short term, let's say a person who's midline in that, a G user, particularly one who's a strong G user, would tend to think that midline of that was innocent. And those who have Z strongly represented on their side would tend to think of midline as being more to the diluted side. Even though it's actually the same stream, and let's say in a theoretical sense it actually is dead middle. But humans never interpret a dead middle signal the same. Everyone interprets that middle signal vastly differently. Has a lot to do with mojo reading. Last one is, what we're talking about, authentic to self-centric. And this is because that poignancy is an individual poignancy, but it can be shared with others. But sometimes that can be interpreted as only considering what is poignant to that person. So that is a more negative side of how that signal can be interpreted, but the positive side is the authenticity, which is that signal is real. They're telling you what their gut reactions, are. They're telling you what their hopes are, their ideals. That's their real belief on how things should be. And so that is a special kind of interaction. So again, it has to do with how well a person does it. So if their poignancy is well developed and they know their nature well, it'll tend to come out in those more positive ends of the spectrum. But you have to always allow for social alchemy, general social alchemy, and also lack of development. Some people, let's say Z alpha mojos, will have a general issue with that more than others. But then also those, for example, who maybe just for some reason memes have caused them to have a lot of Z overdevelopment. That overdevelopment can give an off reading to a distinct signal. And this gets back very much to the fifth gear quasi state. If I want to read her poignancy correctly, I actually have to be able to look at it neutrally. Otherwise, the poignancy, the buoyancy, my frustration, Jonathan Adams' unflappable, that will move me too much. I'll be too affected by that signal and I won't be able to read correctly. So that's pretty much all of it for the poignancy, distinct signal of Xai. Do you want to add any closing thoughts before we go? Just go ahead and finish up and say hi to your friends out there, your growing fans. Be nice to her. She's very nervous. You're doing great.
Yeah, it's a little exposing, especially Xai is, is so personal, and then as you just heard from the power flows, it's very, because they're authentic, all that kind of stuff. It feels very exposed and raw. So, like talking about it is like, eek, I'm exposed, but it's good, and I think hopefully it explains, helps the ones that are Xai Alpha who have it, and also other people who have it within their hierarchy too.
Like the adaptomantics that we mentioned frequently, both have it on their strong side.
Yeah.
And actually, a lot of you logic baby, like those who are Z users, just know you're modulating with Xai. So I wouldn't be too down on that soft, gooey part of yourself because A, it's necessary, and know this, it makes the Z stronger. So if you have Nai and Z versus Nai, Z, and Xai, that's going to win. So yeah, everyone needs their Xai to be well developed.
Yeah, because it's a very powerful tool, and if you don't know what it is, it's just gonna be moving you around.
Because it's very powerful.
It's very powerful, yeah.
But because of that, also it has a lot to do with really fully experiencing the joys out of life. Because when you have that authentic state, when you feel stuff and it's good, there is nothing like it. So if you want that peak, you gotta take that risk. You gotta get developed as well. You gotta do it. You gotta be the hero. You gotta get the special ability to get that reward. And that is authenticity, the sense of harmony, recognizing it, not being afraid of it, taking ownership of it, and realizing that's really cool and it should be strive for and should be protected in others and in other situations, because it's an extremely valuable commodity of the psyche and therefore of the collective. All the 8 powers, they are vital. They provide a vital role between the other powers in your own psyche, and that power plays a vital role in all the 16 mojos. And if it's not being addressed in that way, then we do not have a collective that's working the way it should be. It is sub-heroic. Okay, we're going to fix that. So Xai's going to help that a lot.
Yep. Until next time.